Hey friends, I hope you've had a fabulous week since our last episode. So today I want to chat to you about, I want you to imagine that you are holding a jar in your hand, okay? And now I want you to imagine that you are inside this jar, okay? And you are inside this jar and you are trying to read the label from inside of the jar, okay? And no matter how hard you try to read that label, it basically doesn't make sense, or you're having to try so hard, and basically, no matter what you do, you are unable to read this label. You can't make sense of it because you're on the inside of the jar trying to read the label that is on the outside. Okay. So, can you relate to this? Okay. Hands up. I've got two hands up. In case you're listening on the podcast, hands up if you can relate to this metaphor. Okay. And basically, what this metaphor is trying to say, okay, it basically means that have you ever find yourself inside of the problem and maybe you're stuck inside that problem that you can't see outside of the problem, okay? It might be something that's you're fully immersed in the situation, or it's something that's really challenging to you, or something that's really difficult for you to see because you are fully immersed inside the problem. So, what do we mean by this, okay? And I've often heard to it as well as like you can't read the label from inside the jar. Okay? You can't read the label from inside the jar. And I feel like we've probably been in this situation many times in our life, okay? It could be in relationships, it could be career, it could be business, it could be health, it could be literally any part of our life. We could be stuck, okay, inside the jar trying to read the label. Okay, so what do you do? What do you do when you find yourself in that situation? Okay, so it may be beneficial to gain a little bit of an understanding, first of all, and step back. Okay, let's get some distance on the problem and let's try to look at it from a different perspective. Okay, so you might be able to ask yourself, if you find yourself stuck, you might be able to ask yourself some questions like, am I too close to this problem? Okay. Am I surrounding myself with people who will be able to give me honest feedback to help me with this challenge? Okay. You can't see the label, you can't read the label from inside of the jar. So when you find yourself in that situation, how are you supposed to read the label? Okay. What are you meant to do? So let's have a bit of a chat around this because sometimes you don't even know that you're inside the jar. Okay. Sometimes you don't even know that you're inside the jar. So I'll tell you a little tip that I've kind of done. I have set myself an ideal week. Okay. And we'll dive into this in more podcasts as we come. And I'm sure I touch on them all the time. So I basically have an ideal week. Now, it's not my perfect week. However, it's an ideal week where if everything went to plan, I have scheduled times to do all different sorts of activities within my week. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I actually have an hour popped aside, okay, which is time for me literally to step outside, okay, outside of my business and kind of have a bit of reflection time and kind of just ask myself some questions, which potentially could be kind of taking myself outside of the jar, taking myself outside of the business, and just asking myself some questions around the challenges that I'm going through or any concerns that I might have, just to help me become aware of it and kind of ask myself some thought-provoking questions which might help me identify if I have put myself inside the jar. However, if you don't have that kind of time built into your week or into your month or whatever it might be, sometimes you're not aware you're in the jar unless another person tells you or gives you another solution to go, have you ever thought of it like this? Okay. So the first step might be is that do you have a sounding buddy? Okay. Do you have a partner that you might talk about? Let's say it's business, okay? A partner that you might talk about your business with regularly. Do you have a business colleague that you might talk about, any challenges or any concerns that you may have, maybe even a partner or a spouse or something like that, that you're literally just brain dumping some ideas on them or challenge or talking to them about the challenges or concerns that you might have. Okay. Because sometimes just talking through it and somebody else saying to you something literally like, have you ever thought about it like this? Or have you realized that you're putting a lot of focus on this particular problem? Or, they might just say something and you're like, very interesting. Now that you mention it, I can see that. Okay. So if you don't have someone like a bit of a sounding buddy or whatever you might want to call them, that might be something that you want to, allocate, might even be 30 minutes a week just to kind of chat to someone, talk to them about, what you've been working on that week, what's been on your mind. And it might just help you identify if you have put yourself inside that jar. Okay. And you might find that that's really helpful. Okay. So if you haven't got yourself one of those, I would definitely recommend one. Okay. Now, it might also be something like that you just find that yourself overthinking something. Okay. Hands up, all the overthinkers. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm definitely guilty of being an overthinker as well. And it might just mean that you need some clarity around a situation. Okay. So, you know, can you get yourself out of this? Can you get yourself out of this? Because I'm going to talk about it because I know that I often see clients, okay? I often see clients and they don't realize that they have put themselves in the jar. Okay. They don't realize that they've put themselves in the jar, or they don't realize that they've had this concern come up so many times. And that's where a sounding buddy might be beneficial to you. However, if you're finding that you are putting yourself in the jar for the same issue repeatedly, okay, because you're getting stuck on the same thing repeatedly, um, you may need to get yourself a coach, okay? Because if a coach is trained in this particular area, they may be able to help you find the root cause of why you're putting yourself in that jar, okay? Because it might be something like a limiting belief, okay? You may have caught a limiting belief somewhere throughout your childhood even, or whenever it might be, and you've caught something. You've caught a belief of, I can't do this, or I can't do it as well as XYZ, or I'm not good enough, or I find it hard to learn things quickly, or I find it hard to do XYZ, whatever it might be, you may have caught a limiting belief. Okay. Now, what does that mean? That also means that your unconscious mind, for example, is programmed to actually look for things that are going to support what you're telling yourself. So if you're continuously telling yourself that you can't do XYZ, okay, your unconscious mind, without you realizing it, is going to look for things that are going to support that as being truth. Okay. And the longer that you have been doing this, the harder it is for you to overcome those limiting beliefs. Okay. And that's where a good coach, and in particular, if you were seeing someone like myself, we all use different things. So I would be using some really thought-provoking questions to help you. I would also be using some timeline therapy techniques to help remove any limiting beliefs that you may have. And I'm also going to help to shift your focus. Okay. I'm going to shift your focus so that you're focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. Okay. So, and this is why I just want to talk to you about it. So the first thing would be, okay, is awareness. Okay. If you can start being aware and becoming more and more aware of the things that you're saying to yourself, okay, also whether or not you think you are potentially putting yourself inside this jar, okay, um, you're going to, and also the things that you're focusing on. Are you focusing on what you want, or are you focusing on what you don't want? Okay, because that is a big one. That is a big one. And we can dive deep into that as well, which is your reticular activating system, also known as your RAS. But it's very important for you to be focusing on what you want rather than what you don't want. And when you are stuck inside that jar, most of the time, okay, not all of the time, but most of the time, you are focusing on that problem. Okay. You are focusing on that concern. Okay. You're focusing on whatever the challenge might be. So you are inside this jar. What is that problem? And you were trying to read the label, which is on the outside. So you were trying to find that solution, which is on the outside of that problem. So get yourself a sounding buddy, yourself a partner or someone that you can talk to on a regular basis. Or if you find that you have goals, okay, and you have goals that you want to achieve, or you have some big visions and you're just finding that you're not getting those visions, okay, you're not moving as fast as you wanted to, you're not you know, overcoming those limiting beliefs that are potentially holding you back and sabotaging yourself, okay, reach out to a coach, reach out to me, reach out to someone that you trust, okay? You need to know, like, and trust this person so that they can help you to be the best version of yourself and to achieve your goals. So, first of all, ask yourself, are you inside the jar trying to read the label? What do you need to do? What is the problem? What is the concern? And yeah, what are you prepared to do to get outside of that jar? Okay. Anyway, I hope this is helpful for you. We've definitely all been inside the jar trying to read the label so many times. The first step is definitely awareness. But anyway, until next week, and I'll bring you another episode of the Empowerment Live podcast. Thanks for listening. Bye, everyone.